It is the day for the forensic happy hour again. I'm Lee Reber, and hey, the guest today is me, and so I figured I would first hopefully be toasting someone other than me out there, but we won't talk about me drinking alone here, but. It is a forensic happy hour. Got to make sure that you do have a drink in hand. So, I mentioned that, how typically have a guest, and the guests have been, unbelievable since I started that. I mean, so many different ranges of experience and being in the community. And so, I always ask them, tell us about your life, what's going on. And so I thought I would, share a little bit of that, and then kind of the, digital forensic background, and, really where we're going with this, and really maybe what, if I can give some advice on some of the things that, I think might be important, and then also really, how can you, there's been a lot of tidbits that have come out of how you can get better, how you can learn, how you can get into this. And so hopefully I don't continue to ramble on because no one's asking me questions. I'm in my mind, asking myself questions. So it really kind of started, I'm sure that you guys are aware that I did have a law enforcement career. I mean, that's really where I came from on the law enforcement side of it. Prior to that, went to school and really didn't want to do anything but play baseball. And so that's what I did, and played baseball and wind up in doing psychology type stuff, and, psychology. And then, after that, actually played professional baseball for a few years, and then went and said, you know what, I better probably get a real job. And so became a police officer. During that time, I'd always been and worked with the Commodore 64, was kind of like a computer geek, and really kind of dove into those, if you guys remember. I mean, I'm not going to use dates or years because that becomes an issue, and you figure out how old I am. But so one of the things, that I would always do, especially, is try to figure out how Zork worked, or some of those other types of games that you'd wind up playing. So I'd tear those down, make my own, and during that time, I was still, I was going to school, and then when I came into law enforcement, I really wanted to, there was a computer forensic guy, and I said I wanted to be that guy, but fortunately, you have to push a patrol call around, answer calls for service, which was probably the best time of my career in law enforcement. So did that, had to do it. You have to do it for at least 3 years. After that, I went into CID, or Criminal Investigation Division, and still had the old dude doing computer forensics. So I'd always kind of hang out, go see if he wanted to retire. Hey, can I help you out? And hey, you're really old and maybe you should go and retire. So eventually, I started doing some of these cases. They were going to retire, and I wound up, getting into this. And so I got into computer forensics, did the ISIS, those BJR classes, but was just doing computer forensics. It had nothing to do necessarily with phones. And so the weird part about that, I had it was kind of a weird happenstance, and just had the opportunity to represent the state in a regional in regional events where you kind of learn the different technologies and everything else. And so Mr. Buchwald said, "Hey, yeah, I want you to represent your state. So go ahead and do that." Crazy part about it, so started going to different areas, and it was like in Phoenix, there was so many presenting. They were presenting this thing like, "Hey, I just came back from training," and if you guys remember BK Forensics, hey, came back for some training, and let me show you all the stuff, that and how important these cell phone things might be to your investigations. And so, Carl Sonnenberg, it was the one that was giving the presentation on that. And I'm telling you right now, that was when I'm like, that's kind of really important. These cell phones, you know what? I wonder if there's stuff on that that's really can help with investigations. And I mean, that's duh, right? And so I'm like, oh, computers, I have now this kind of phone stuff. So I started talking to Carl. We started chatting, quite a bit. And he wound up starting a company. Mobile Forensics Inc. is what he had started in Carlsbad, California. And so wound up going to that class. And so here's the interesting thing. If you guys are watching this and the names, so, I was in the class. Rick Mislin was in the class. Kip Loving was in the class. So Sam Brothers was in the class. Rick Ayers was in the class. So, I mean, those names, if you guys have been around for a little while, you'll know those names, especially in on the mobile forensic mobile side. And so we were in this class. It's really good. Another guy that was in the class as well. He and I were, we were kind of really wanted to get more into it. I mean, we were really excited. So Bill Naparowski, rest in peace, he's passed away since. But we decided, you know what, we want to do more. So obviously we got with Carl and started talking, and we started teaching this stuff. And so we started going around and traveling and doing some of these courses for Carl. Then, just doing these. And then we were utilizing tools like BitPim, if you're familiar with that. BitPim, and I'll talk more about that. But, in our courses that we had BitPim, and we were utilizing, Parabens products as well. Cell Seizure and SIM Seizure. Back in the day, Sistine, the data pilot that we would have within our classes. And really kind of diving in pretty much all law enforcement that would go there. But as I started teaching or just learning more and more about these mobile devices, I'm like, this is some good stuff. So, one of the things, I guess, if I can stop and just tell some of the things like with BitPim. BitPim was you're able to do with, say, CDMA devices, be able to go in and, pull like a file system. And as you guys are doing forensics, file systems are gold, right? Because within file systems, that's where our files are that you're able to dive into. The different thing about, say, these flip phones that you might have, and I call them those, or feature phones, it was because it wasn't necessarily, I don't want to say, your Android or iOS that you're used to now, but utilizing like a Brew operating system. And it was kind of like, okay, reverse engineering everything. You dump a file system, but you might have a flat text file in there or with hex in it that you're like, okay, well, I know there's a date and time that exists in here. How do I find it? The software pulls it out. Where does it go? And then you're kind of reversing that to figure out where that, the date is. And once you find that, you're like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. So, it's really kind of getting into the weeds of, or getting into that hex that really I fell in love with kind of doing mobile phones, because it was one of those, you utilize these tools, but there was so much additional information that you can go. And it was really, the training side of it was almost non-existent into kind of diving into this data. Because, majority of law enforcement are like, yeah, whatever. You know what, just give me the data so I can go in and talk to this guy and say, hey, yeah, you said this type of thing. But we're talking about, 20 text messages and, maybe 20 calls in the call log. And so, anyway, as it progressed, wound up working there almost 15 years on the law enforcement side of it, and then wound up going to another forensic company, working in kind of the automated tool side of it, and still writing and trying to do with the training side of it. But one of the things that, I think is extremely important for everyone to understand is really the training aspect. And I know that a lot of the guests, that we have, that I've had on the show, pretty much every one of the conversations that comes out of that is really about training, and not necessarily, a tool so that you can, learn a specific tool. That's important in a way, but really understanding, dates and times, like I had mentioned, and trying to understand where really data lives and how it exists. within those types of file systems. So really diving into it and having the foundation. So starting on with the training side of it within the other company or within say Access Data, and developing that, and also coming up into and developing a tool for that. Still during that time, it was right in between, say, or it was in with law enforcement and with before Access Data. So I kind of went ahead. Is that I wound up taking over Mobile Forensics Inc. And I was still in law enforcement as I moved in there. And what's interesting in the MFI, there's so many people that we wind up in, with the training and get these guys as part of the training cadre, so to speak. And I mean, we're talking. So I mean, some of the trainers, that trained for MFI, Danny Garcia, you have Kevin DeLong, and Chris Vance, that you would have as trainers coming into teaching kind of the MFI. And obviously those names have gone on and fantastic careers of working and going to other professions. And so as moving on that, and what's cool about that is really as part of the MFI, we taught kind of the backward approach is what I talk about. That is the backward approach to mobile forensics, because typically what people do is here's the tool, here you do extract the data. Whereas, we wanted to go in and instill in people, man, data isn't just laid out as you'd see it on the screen. It's within these different types of files. So really diving into that, finding that information so that you can really understand how the tool is working. And that's really why we call it the backward approach. And we would go and build a foundation on that and those file systems and building, tools that, we're able to go in and, convert those dates, being able to go in and pull that information out. So it's nice because those that went from with the MFI went on and still are, had trainers all over the place. And so that's fantastic because, again, taking that approach and them building upon it, obviously the years that they've gone through it. So again, if you can give information, or if you have that information, it's great to share with other people because, again, the community now. So going into now with the Access Data and having with some of the training on that, building that type of that system up, as well as kind of tools, and then moving into now currently with Oxygen and running that tool. Obviously, that's 20 years worth of going through there in a short amount of time, 13 minutes, and going through. So one of the things that it's important during that time. During that entire time, there's always these failures. And sometimes, the biggest failures that you have are really yourself in either, saying, oh, I just don't get it, don't know, and kind of giving up on that. And I think everyone does, because if you guys know mobile devices, the thing is, you understand how difficult it is when you have someone who has been doing computer forensics, their entire life, and they're like, well, you know what? I'm not going to touch those mobile devices. And still to this day, right? Because I don't want to say they've gotten any easier, right? There's so much information, and it changes, different releases. And so one of the things taking from, say, the challenge that you have of say the mobile device, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, is that don't be afraid to, if you're in law enforcement or, and you're now wearing every hat that's out there. You need to understand with today's devices, with today's investigations, unfortunately, there's going to have to be some sort of specialization in that, because I found it myself, is that when I was doing computer forensics as well as phones, during that time, the last few years, I was getting hundreds of phones. I mean, hundreds of phones that would come in from all over the state. And I still had, say, a caseload on, doing computers with the hard drives, with all of that, with that data. And so, and some advice for you is to, if there's a possibility of specialization, to do that. and to really kind of focus on that area. But if you're unable to do that, you need to say no, right? As in, all this data is coming in, or you need to give realistic expectations to what you can complete. Because quite honestly, still to this day, and even 10 years ago, the backlog of data or of exams is just skyrocketed. And typically what happens when there's a backlog is either one of two things happen. It never gets done, or it gets done pretty poorly, right? And so understanding that and having kind of an idea of really what you want to do it. And now if you decide you really want to focus on mobile devices, or you want to focus on, say, computers or network forensics or some type of incident response, get deep into it. Get deep into it because, you want to be a sponge. You want to be able to tear something down and say exactly how it's working. The example, and I always bring up mobile devices because I do mobile devices, and I enjoy doing that, and I understand where or what it takes to kind of go through that. And it's a lot of hours of actually your eyes hurting, and that's why I have to wear glasses all the time, of just staring and trying to figure out how is that data laid out. What do these bytes mean? How can what's being utilized? How can I take that and make this into a date or some sort of characters? So trying to dig into that, and there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of resources that are available to people right now, and I'm going to share some of those with you that I have gathered and actually had conversations with these individuals that are in there. And so one of the things that you need to make sure that you're doing is not only network. I know it's difficult right now to network with certain individuals because we for the last 6 months have been having to do all of this stuff online and trying to reach out and to do different things, but people are available. I mean, especially in social media, a lot of people will definitely get back to you if you do have and you have questions over something. How can I get started into this kind of crazy forensic deal? But the biggest thing, and I'm always talking about kind of getting on my soapbox, and it has everything to do with understanding, building your foundation of what's going on. And then obviously you're going to utilize automated tools. You're going to do that. You're going to continue to do that because they're built to assist, and you will be using multiple tools, right? But you need to also understand that you need to testify. You need to explain to individuals of how important that information and understanding that stuff is going to be, because if you don't and you can't explain that information, then one or two, the person that you're explaining to is going to go, yeah, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Or two, especially if you're testifying to that, is that they're going to say you don't know what you're talking about, and that can be a really big issue, right? So trying to get that and trying to understand, getting into and understanding what's going around. So just look at the things that are out there right now. You might, if you start talking about, Apollo or Unfurl that you might have on these iLeap that you might look into it. That's stuff that you can actually go in and dissect and really understand what's going on. It's going in and I'm looking at this code and this is what it's parsing. This is how it's working, so that you can, reverse that and really gather that information. It might sound like a lot of work to you, but in the end, it's going to make you a better investigator. It's going to make you a better, teacher, instructor, mentor to be able to understand that. But here's one of the things that I want to, explain to you as well is you're never going to know everything. It's impossible. It's impossible to know everything about a mobile device, a file system, that you might have on a computer, anything that's there. But there are people that do know, right? And you should never, I guess, out of, oh yeah, well, this person must know it. Oh, they don't know it? Oh. No one's going to say that, right? The best answer to a question that you don't know is, I don't know, right? Let's look. Or, you know what? let me give you to someone that can. Or, how can we learn together in trying to grab some of this information? So that is, and that's pretty difficult, especially for me, as when I was coming, especially on the law enforcement side of it. People come to you and you're like, okay, I don't want to say no, or I don't want to say I don't know. Because if I say I don't know, they're going to go, really? You've been at all this training, you say that you can do this, and now you can't. But like I said, reasonable expectations, transparency, that is crazily important in trying to get that. And you know what? And that's really one of the reasons that I started doing this with the Forensic Happy Hour. It wasn't just to meet some cool people, but it was, well, okay, maybe it was. But, it was more or less really to have a conversation, to show that these people that are, all over the internet and producing these amazing tools and understanding that are normal people, just like you and me, right? They can sit back, they can have a conversation, have a drink, because obviously that's important, and just go through some of the information that you might have. So, I wanted to share with you, some of the things that, if you look at it, and what might help you, especially if you're talking. And I know we talk about this a lot, especially when Phil was on, and it gets brought up a ton by examiners that we have on here, by experts. And if you can, this week in forensics, and you can go through, and this is really any discipline that you're in. Any discipline that you are, whether IR stuff, computer forensics, memory forensics, mobile devices, diving into that. This is going to allow you to get, if you subscribe to it, you can go directly to the website and be able to go through a lot of. But if you want to subscribe and actually get to this information delivered to you on Monday, then you simply just can go and subscribe. And again, it has unbelievable amount of data that you can go through, and you will not learn something every week, because you'll see how much information, how much people are putting out to the community. Again, to me, it has been a great resource. To simply going to that, and now I'm going to flood my inbox again because of subscribe on that today, instead of going to the website and kind of tinkering around and grabbing it. But so I think this resource in itself will completely pay dividends to your career and understanding. And obviously, you can make sure that you get a hold of Phil on that as well. Also, another, if you have, it's just, again, really a place that aggregates the data for you. And like I said, I'm if I can use the word hugely, supportive of training and being able to go to a website and being able to go in and grab some of that information at a glance, because there's a lot of aggregators. If you look at it, if you're able to go in and grab and see the information that you want, different types of training and areas that you can go and dive into. So I'd advise you to go into the Digital Forensic Incident Response and the Training website that you can go on there with and understand, and make sure that you send information to Brett Shaver. So I'll make sure that I include some of that information for you as well. Another one too, if we have this and go through, is going to be, and this website obviously says, hey, click on for cookies, but with the about Digital Forensic Incident Response, or about DFIR, if you have, to jump onto that as well, along with the Discord server. The Discord server, make sure if that you are on that. That's kind of like, I don't want to say this week in forensics type of stuff, but that's really, it lays everything out into a nice little section for you that you're able to dive into your discipline, and even jump into some other ones that might interest you, and get not only some great advice by those people that are the who's who in the community, but ask questions. Asking questions, you can't, you're not able to solve something, and you want to try and figure something out, because okay, I'm going to say now, not necessarily my support, right? At Oxygen, but okay. Well, anyway, trying to get that information sometimes is difficult if you're going directly. But I mean, on this, it's crazy how quickly, and the majority of vendors are on there as well, that they're able to answer some questions. But if it's like something that you think is like a 0-day issue that you're not able to, and you really know, someone else might have ran into it. So being able to go on to the Discord server is going to help you out, I think, tremendously. And well, I know it will. And they do a great job in trying to get that. Hey, one of the things too, if you do mobile phones, hey, here's a great book to buy. Shameless plug by me, the second edition that you have, and it looks like this. And hey, what's cool is if people are watching this and things like that, there could be a prize for 10 people, and it might have something to do with a book. So we shall see on that. But, trying to go in, but there's so much information out there, guys, that is free, that you're able to go ahead and pick up, be able to, it takes a while for you to, one, either feel comfortable, to feel competent in what you're doing. But there's a lot of resources out there, and they're here to help you. To be honest with you, this whole COVID isolation by everyone, whether it be conferences, whether it be their virtual conferences, whether there's all these Zoom meetings, there's things that you can go in and watch or meet. It's made things, pretty available in my opinion, for people to go in and have a conversation, be able to actually access individuals. And I think that to me has been the most tremendous gain in the industry, is actually being able to have a conversation or to do things like this or have a virtual conference. I think that the information that is produced now out of this has, again, this is my opinion, but it's just from what I've observed, it has been tenfold of what previous, say, 6 months. Now, granted, you still have those who have been, producing all of these and producing the tools and doing these and putting these blogs together and grabbing that. But if you look at the blogs or say the sites that aggregate data, you'll look at that information and it has, grown the information, because there's more people that are out there writing. There's more people that are out there doing research. And I don't necessarily think it's because of time. I think it's because of we all just should be together, right? And that's it's. And one of the guests, I know there's a conversation, is that really, if you can go and you can walk away from a conversation or from a training class or from reading a blog post or from reading a book and come away with, say, just one new nugget out of that, you're a winner, right? Grabbing that information and opening your mind to some of the things that maybe you didn't know, right? And trying to accept that. But in return, it's something you need to give back, right? If it's something that you're like, oh my gosh, light bulb just came on, or I was just doing this examination and there's something really, really cool, put that out. Put that out to the community. Don't just hide it. Get that information out so that people who are either running into this are like, oh, that's crazy. They'll put it into, one of these tools that they're able to go, or they can, learn something. This new artifact that you've done. And quite honestly, again, you're seeing all of this on the, running through a lot of with the social media platforms. So it's been pretty great and pretty tremendous. But there's a lot of resources out there that you guys can find. And so make sure that you are looking Because if you're not looking, if you're just simply relying on the tool to tell you this story, and this is what the story is, you're going to have a story with a lot of holes in it. Is it easy? Is doing digital forensics easy? If there's anybody that says that it's easy, I would have to say they're lying. Because this job of going through all this information, right, to prove the truth through data is, I think, one of the most difficult jobs out there, right? Granted, data doesn't lie, right? But a tool can. So you want to make sure that you understand, like I said, exactly what's occurring underneath that. Build your foundation up onto training, because that in itself, once you build that foundation, the sky's the limit. You're going to wind up, you're going to wind up sharing some tremendous stuff to the community, and that's exactly what everyone hopes for. So again, you know what? I found out that when you are not hosting, I don't get to drink my beer as much as I should hope. When you're the host and the guest, it makes it a little bit difficult. Was hoping for a little more beer drinking, but hey, I hope you guys enjoyed it. So, if you are and you did make it to the end of this on here, please go out and retweet. If you retweet the posting of this on that, or any of those tweets, retweet that out. And the first 10 people, I think I'm going to send them a book. So even if you don't want it, you can always sell it, maybe for $1.50 or something. But anyway, I appreciate everyone kind of spending a little of their Friday. Hope you got just a little bit out of this, and if not, then we have next week with our guest. The guest will actually have a guest for you guys, and I'll make sure that I put all that information out there, because actually one of the websites that I put up as a great resource, he's going to be here. So anyway, make sure that you guys are following the social media, my social media at Celdet, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Everyone have a safe weekend. Talk to you soon. Thanks.